Welcome to the BAC Spring 26 lecture series, Just Narratives. The title of this lecture series has connotations of justice, and tonight's presentation by Antonio DiMambro has social and environmental justice at its core. It is a pleasure and honor to introduce this lecture and its author tonight. Antonio is very special to me. He gave me my first full-time job in this country as an architectural intern many years ago. I worked at his firm, Comunitas, for 3 years until my daughter was born, and later returned on a part-time basis for 3 more years. I learned a lot from Antonio. Our office team entered 3 competitions during that time, winning 3 distinction awards. One of them led to the project that you're going to see tonight. It was an international competition to redesign the shoreline of the city of Mestre in Italy. Mestre is a large industrial port on the Venice Lagoon, overlooking the World Heritage Site of Venice. The extensive waterfront was heavily damaged by years of industrial activities, including the transportation and storage of hazardous materials. Antonio poured his heart and soul into the design proposal, bringing along friends and colleagues from Italy, as well as the entire office here in Boston. The competition entry was written in Italian and prescribed native plant species found in the Veneto region and the lagoon. The jury could not believe that they had given the first award to an American team. After a couple of trips and many long-distance conversations, Antonio was able to convince the local authorities that they should give him the commission to design the park. The project you're going to see represents the culmination of 30 years of work, including many trips and endless phone calls, numerous community meetings in Mestre and Venice, and many design iterations. It received an AIA Urban Design Award in 1997. I personally think that the result is beautiful, vibrant, and treads lightly on the environment. Please welcome to the podium my dear friend and mentor, Antonio DiMambro.
Welcome, all of you. She will keep me in line. She's a special woman. It's my daughter. So let me begin where I usually end my talks. I usually put the acknowledgements and the credits at the end to acknowledge people that participated. But this is a special project, and I want to begin with the acknowledgement and the credit and my gratitude for all those people that have participated in this project and have contributed to this project. A special thanks goes to all my collaborators that over the 30 years of my professional life and beyond have participated with me in the development of ideas, plans, and have listened, as I refined my belief about the ethics of the profession and the role that as professionals we need to play in our society. In this list, however, I want to acknowledge the team that I had assembled for the last phase of the project, which you will see today. It's a special team of brotherly that we bond in the process of realizing the project, sharing not fancy titles, not big stuff. How many people work in your office? How many? It was a very difficult question to answer. But each one that worked in my office shared the views, the ideas of how we need to act responsibly in our profession. So to all these people, and many of them left us. I have a debt of gratitude. Bruno, Riccardo, Hermano, and others that are not with us. They are here. So let me start with a clarification. You know, Venice and its lagoon, it's a magical place. And the leaders of Venice, a city that became known with the name of Serenissima, the most serene of all the cities. Their leaders for 1,000 years have been the guardians of the genius of that place. The most unstable, vibrant, ecological wonder that I know of. I need, at this point, before I start the story of the project, since there are several students in the audience, to reduce in a nutshell what is a lagoon, and why is so important, and what are the dynamic relationships that exist historically in this place. There are two opposing processes. First, the natural process of rivers and sea that collide, caress each other twice a day. rivers, fresh water, sea, salt water. And then there is a second dynamic at play. Man and nature. And man has always tried to change nature to fit its needs. While the first process is a 6,000-year-old, the second process, man and nature, started in the 17th century and proceeded for 3 centuries. And man always wanted to change, bigger, larger. But La Serenissima had established incredible boundaries to these processes. And they developed the institutional framework that at the time consisted of check and balances. And already in the 11th century, there was a magistratura della giustizia that regulated within the lagoon how much fish you could extract, where, if how long. And then in the 15th century, the provveditorati della sanità, they regulated all the economic activities that could go within the lagoon. It was not an easy decision, but they had check and balances. And then in the 15th century, they created the magistratura alle acque, something that Boston tried with the MWRA to imitate. Wishful thinking. And that institution framed the governance of the lagoon ecosystem and its morphology. You could not change the lagoon and its form. So this incredible rendering, which I just love and have spent hours in preparing this talk, it's a depiction of the lagoon in 1572, at the peak of the contribution that the Serenissima was leaving for posterity. And renderers are people that are supposed to, this is a very complicated, a bird's eye view like this one here. Took a team of observers that spent days, months recording each building and then assembling in a drawing that gives us a spectacular view of the reality as the power of the time, the Doge, not the Doge of today in this country. But the Doge of that time wanted to convey, it was in many ways his sketch. He ordered a one-point perspective bird-eye view, and at the center of this, let's see if this works. Yeah? At the center of that drawing is the Ducal Palace and all the islands, and on the bottom of this drawing is the power of the time, from the Doge to all the magistrates that controlled this environment. And each island in the Venetian lagoon was depicted with clarity and a depth of information that today technology never will be able to convey. But look at the lagoon and its edges. The lagoon is as big as Venice. That's not true. That's not true. The real lagoon is an incredible environment, 212 square miles between two rivers that come down from the Alps. And the island of Venice, it's a tiny, tiny portion. Most of the lagoon is marshland. It's a very shallow environment. Huh. The regulation of that equilibrium, that ecological equilibrium, was broken. One night in 1966, the entire city flooded. They wanted to immediately save Venice. Venice cannot be saved, can be only transformed. And the problems that were unfolded at that time required a special set of laws that the Italian government decided to promulgate. And these laws have led in 1984 to the creation of a new consortium, Venezia Nuova, which regulated the protection barrier that the city and other organizations decided to build in order to save the lagoon from the sea. At this point, having given you the framework, I'd like to start my presentation of the project of the city with two heads, Mestre and Venice, a project conceived at the turn of the century between the 20th and the 21st, and I've organized this presentation in three parts, but it will be a very dense presentation. I wish I had 3 hours. I don't. So pardon my speedy. In the first part, I'll give you the understanding of the historical facts and all the conditions that led to the international competition. In the second part, I will illustrate the guiding planning documents and all the detailed project documentation that we have prepared, and then give you a view of the completed part of the project and guide you through a tour of the park, which is an assemblage of images that I have taken during my many visits. When I finish a project, I never abandon it. You, as a professional, need to be accountable to what you do and defend it if it's worth it. The project to reknit this city had many important topics and incredible challenges. The topics were, what is a bipolar city? What is a lagoon estuary? What system of connection we need to think about it? How do you think of the ecological restoration, the reconstruction of the natural landscape, and which are the appropriate environmental remediation that need to be considered? And the challenges were as complex as the topics. How do you correct past mistakes? What kind of institutional coordination you must have? How do you deal with the emergence of political tensions? How do you help the city, and I mean help the city to find the appropriate funding for construction and maintenance, and how you conceive this green hinge, green hinge, and the transformative investments that are necessary to achieve it. In the rest boundary is the limitation of the competition area. Note, it's as big as Venice and its islands. Consists of 700 hectares, water, heritage sites, canals, salt marshes, industrial zone, dilapidated and polluted areas, transportation, infrastructure, urban voids, truly a nexus at the convergence of infrastructure and political conflicts. The site was a very special one. It's where an umbilical cord was eventually, historically, attached to the island, and the island became connected with the main infrastructure that the country was building. And there were many improvements done in this area. You can see that in this area, there is a band of protective natural habitat called le barene in Italian. And canals were built to connect Mestre to the lagoon before a grove of railroad and other infrastructure were used to cover this natural habitat. The actions that changed the nature of that natural habitat is summarized in these 3 dots. First, the incredible development of a very ill-conceived, I may add, a posteriori, industrial park, the most important industrial part of northern Italy, right on the lagoon. And that incredible futuristic park was conceived without considering the implication of what was being done to the environment. The second point is an idea that all the best minds of our profession were advocating for and pushed for, to bring the city of Mestre to the edge of the lagoon and face the old Venice. This also was an ill-conceived idea, but the best mind of the time produced it. And I'm talking about my teachers, Quaroni, Samona, and others. You see in this drawing on the right side, upper corner, one of the images of this new city that was going to be born on the marshland, covering the natural habitat that existed there. But while this discussion was going on, the people that had proposed the greatest industrial pole of northern Italy were dumping toxic waste on the same place. And all of a sudden, we had an ecological disaster. And the site was in search of identity, character, and function. It's a site that flooded big time, and toxic waste was deposited without protection on the Barene. And to make things even worse, all the urban waste of Venice came to the point and was processed and shipped outside of the site. Meanwhile, the place that was so dear to the people of Mestre was this little park at the tip, was their common ground. Very quickly, let me show you the condition of all this area dilapidated and in search of identity. There were heritage sites. There was incredible waterways and infrastructure that was in a state of decay. Constructions in the water had limited the flow of water, creating major problems. So we entered the competition with a very clear choice that we had made. We saw 3 courses for the ecological evolution of the city, of the lagoon. The natural course that with time would silt the entire lagoon. The conservation course of action that controlled the lagoon environment, and the current course where the sea will take over again. The conservation course of action guided our work, and I believe it's the right choice here. We were awarded this the winning with a very simple motivation. They liked our proposal because it was based on the restoration of the ecology and the landscape. We had expressed very new ideas about the environmental politics, and we believed that any restoration of the ecology there had to be done with services and transportation systems. The image speaks for itself. After we won, the city were puzzled, as Margarita said, that an American team had won this. And I began to have negotiations with the city leaders. They wanted me to do this project. I said, maybe. I believe in interdisciplinarity and an holistic approach. I believe in participatory processes. And I have very strong views about the reclamation of the environment. We need to make sure that the city and its citizens understand this complexity. It was not an easy task, but they agreed with it, and we began our adventure. And the first thing that we produced was a series of diagrams that illustrate how the entire area would be reorganized and how the various parts, the kit of parts, would fit together in a new comprehensive view, and how the activities would be programmed inside each of these zones. You see that the centerpiece is a series of educational facilities, university facilities, because when Mestre wanted to be recompensated, they were stuck with the la brutta immagine of the place, and they wanted to be recompensated with a series of investments that were based on culture, on new economic activities, and the respect for nature. The most important part of this diagram is this band of this ochre color, the band of respect. There is a zone, a buffer zone, that you have to respect, and you have to contain the growth of the city. You have to make sure that the regeneration of the natural landscape occurs there. The long-term development plan was refined because we had new information, and some of the things that we were suggesting in the original proposal could not be achieved. We ended up with this plan, which is a delicate restoration of the landscape with the infusion of economic, cultural, and recreational centers at strategic points. And the basis of all of this was a fine-tuned network of roadways and walkways and canals. The image that we proposed was the hinge between the two realities of Mestre and Venice, a focal point of the large metropolitan area. The backbone of this was green infrastructure, supported by other infrastructure, but was made of very important pieces of the lagoon: woodland, recreational park, ecological gardens, urban green, natural habitat, and the stabilization of the entire water edge. The improvements that we proposed for each of these areas were compelling. How many nights we spent discussing the look of these places, but you see the transformation. For example, along Canale Ossellino, all these boats that were there prevented water to move. We proposed to free that, and new edges were defined. Along Canale Salso, a two-side canal with economic activity on one side and pathways for strolling on the other. Along Canale San Giuliano, a dumping ground, when I first arrived there, now a promenade, and that leads to a meeting place once again, which is Punta San Giuliano and its reorganization of all the activities. And under this grove, a series of facilities for picnic, for community life, etc. But the most important thing we proposed was a metropolitan intermodal facility, a terminal that becomes the catalyst for the revitalization of the other nightmare on the other side. And it becomes a symbolic gateway to Lagoon, a research center, park, and other facilities for large gathering, multi-level parking and tourist services. And the Lagoon Heritage Memorial, which we planned inside the fortress and the exhibition areas. We finished our work and produced 36 panels, which I shipped, and the city decided to have an exhibition. I couldn't attend that day. The fate and my body was beginning to tell me that I was traveling too much. But I sent few messages in the form of short essays that were printed by the three major papers. And I said to them, to redesign the city, it is possible. We have accepted your challenge. Now you need to win the battle. And in the image on the left, you see Mayor Cacciari, Pro-Mayor Zorzetto, and other leaders. They were there in front of all the documentation, and they had to answer questions from the journalists. They said, please help us. Let's make sure that people understand this proposal. And others said that a new, unique estuary city will be born. And so the adventure moved from paper to reality. The agreement we negotiated was very complicated, but it was extremely important. The park as a key link connecting Venice and Mestre. It had to be a bottom-up, not a top-down. And we needed, our challenge was to demonstrate the establishment of the natural habitat as a priority and a possibility, and providing ideas for site remediation was very, very complex. After 4 years of hard work, this is the final plan that was produced. The ideas that were embedded in the beginning are still here, but they are refined and they are much richer. So we reopened the view of Venice, which had been forgotten. We looked back with pride to the ugly city that needed to be fixed and become La Bella Mestre. The complexity of the final design and the implementation challenges were almost insurmountable. And I had to learn a lot about the procurement and bidding process, the project phasing, the stakeholder coordination. The list of stakeholder coordination was long, you have no idea. And they all had power, and they didn't talk to each other. And here I came from Boston every month, every week, every 2 days to make sure that they would dialogue. And only through dialogue you achieve change. And the final design, which was further refined, was based on a very simple reorganization. The final design that the city entrusted my firm was the heart of the park. And other people and other organizations wouldn't be entrusted with the other contiguous pieces. But in designing the heart, the main ideas was a walk, a promenade that would take you from the city, from the center city, until the end when you, as a pedestrian, meet again the edge of the lagoon. And these recreational fields filled with eco-friendly lawns, these meadows, these wetlands that we had added in the final design, with native planting, a wildflower planting, were selected to help nature in the process of phytoremediation. That was our answer to purify the dirt and to make sure that the place was usable and enjoyable.
We're getting close to the time of questions and answers.
Yes.
Would you mind
Yes.
showing a lot of the images?
Yes, I have 2 more of these, and I will be quiet. The grading, and it was a very complex operation because we wanted to make sure that the drainage of the site would be successful, and the planting was a joy to choose them and to care for. But we had to take care of the remediation. The first priority, how do you deal with the toxic waste? It was the most difficult piece of the work. And we ended up doing a piece of architecture that nobody will ever see. It's a sarcophagus that is 1,500 meters long and goes underground for 15 meters to meet a solid clay. I am not going to talk about it. It took us 3 years to arrive at this solution. And here are the phases of the construction. And then we had to protect the edge of the place with new edge that recalls the Venetian architecture of the island and the field of experimentation for the restoration of the natural landscape was the most complex thing that my dearest colleagues and I, that incredible team of experts assembled, worked night and day. We were granted by the city also the opportunity to do some architectural design. But I was not interested here in the architectural design of the Vitruvius incredible laws and ideas. I left that in Venice. For this site, my inspiration was the locals, the place, the element of the place, these vertical lines, the form of these boats, and what I had on my back, the incredible place where the new technology of Italy became an example for the world. The most complicated thing was the connection. How do you connect this place to the city? 1,000 example. But in the end, it became a very simple sequence that included a neighborhood park, a bridge, a pedestrian bridge, an urban park, and the national park. That was the beginning of the walk. So let me show you examples of the new architecture that we were trying here. And we wanted to unify nature and built form. The construction, the bridge, and there is under the bridge a 6-way rotary that is very complicated and was kept open during the construction. The construction of the North Gateway, a building conceived as a transparent screen and a filter, and the skating rink, which is another gateway that recalls the big forms of the nautical area and the genius of the technology that lies behind me. The people couldn't wait to see this place, and now I go fast. They demanded that there was an early opening, which Mayor Costa granted against my advice, but we did it, and they came, and they discovered why the plan looks like it is. From the top of the bridge, there was this screen that framed the view, the majestic view of Venice, and each open window frames one of the iconic campanili of the old city. And the skating rink could become a stage for concerto. Many forces wanted to have more, and they wanted to have here incredible, disruptive, I may add, Heineken festivals and the YouTube festival that they used to do in San Marco, they were brought here, etc., etc. But the place became a showcase also for cultural events. So I promised you, and I will give you now, a guided tour of the Parco that has been realized up to today. So you can see the sequence that I have chosen starts from neighborhood San Marco. It goes through the connection, the urban park, and then meandering through until we get to the lagoon and the ecological area. So let's walk through this place. I will get a sip of water while you see it. The bridge goes out of the green. The deck of the bridge is in wood. Gateway doesn't have a face. Doesn't have a gate. And nature takes over. And this gate, it's a sculptured building that, like a large transparent screen, forms this diaphanous partition between the city building and the greenery of the lagoon. From that point, we move in the parkland and see the grassy knoll, the tree-lined pathways, the meadow, the ecological garden, and how people use this incredible place. And the vegetation that nobody believed we could achieve, it's there, even without the proper maintenance. And Fred, don't forget, we planted 4 trees of mulberry. They ripen 2 weeks before the one that you planted in your backyard. But they are tasty, and you are welcome to come and visit. Rest area are blended with the ecological gardens. The rest area, and we attracted the most incredible fauna again in their habitat. But the day they did the Heineken concert, they got a heart attack, they disappeared, and it took a long time for them to come back. And this is the beginning of the Garden of the Lagoon, that magical place and you see the architecture disappears. And the entire redesign of the edge of the water. But the most important thing, on top of the remediated toxic waste site, we designed an ellipse with two observation platforms, one facing Venice, the other one facing Mestre. I'm standing here from the platform of Mestre, looking at the silhouette of the historic center of Venice that has been recaptured for the enjoyment of the people. And from that place, you can see the entire new, renewed landscape of the lagoon. And you see the multiplicity of the uses and the building and the recollection that this building give us, the remembrance of the form of the place and the new technology that makes it happen. To conclude, I believe that this project demonstrates that the re-establishment of the natural landscape, the ecological sensitive areas along the lagoon is possible and must be completed. We gave a place to the citizen to reconnect with the nature. Our park, their park, connects Venice to the mainland and the lagoon. It's conceived as an act of reconciliation that reconnects and reknits the urban fabric with the regional landscape and corrects the environmental mistake of the past with humility. A metropolitan park has become a catalyst for the economic development and beautification of the city. Thinking about the future, as we search again a dynamic balance between humanity and nature, let's remember that Homo sapiens, or humans, must make peace with nature. Venice remains a tale of two cities. The challenges that it faces in the 21st century are massive. Mass tourism and obsolete industrial sites, the dichotomy that has been created by an hinterland population of 225,000 and a shrinking population in the historic center of 40 to 50,000, and the visitors that come from all over the world to see that magical place that the Serenissima leaders left us. Venice, we gave it this strategic green infrastructure investment as an act of reconciliation, a $1.4 billion investment. The first phase, 350 million, to reconnect, unify the environment in this moment of rethinking, of confusion. The city is trying to reposition itself in the global economy, even though the city had accepted, promulgated a series of ideas. The idea of the continuous belt of marshland and the reorganization of all the infrastructure of the space in between various parts. The reality is that forces and counter forces are still at work. Parco San Giuliano is an unfinished project. Thank you, Giuliano. A cultural treasure that requires continuous protection. When David Dillon reviewed this project in 1997, he said of the city that Parco San Giuliano was the most courageous act that Venice completed in that century, catalyzing the transformation of transportation services, landscape, cultural life of the region. I ask my fellow Venetians, the heir of the Serenissima, what courageous act will you so choose for this century? Next phase of the Prague, in my mind, it's very clear, but the reality of the place is overwhelming. You see what we have achieved, you see next to it the next phase. This incredible reality must be reconciled. Venice cannot cannot exist without its lagoon. It's becoming an endangered species. And thinking about the future, let us remember all the emerging themes and the new conflicts that have been left unresolved and need to be dealt with confrontation or dialogue. Thank you. Allow me one more minute to thank, first of all of you, but to tell you, even though I had a difficult life, I was blessed. The love and devotion of a special woman in my life. And that and I close today my involvement with this project, but my granddaughter, Elia Gioia DiMambro, will be entrusted to plant the olive tree someplace in the park at the right time as a symbol of peace. Thank you.